Hey everybody, it's Dave Dugdale, learningvideo.com. Today I'm going to be comparing the Blackmagic Pocket 4K to the Sony A7R3 and basically just comparing color. For the Pocket 4K, I'm just going to be using video mode, and the Sony, I'm just going to be using creative style standard. By shooting in video mode and not S-Log or film mode, that takes me, Dave, out of the equation. So I won't be like altering the colors. I'm going to be showing you the colors that the basic camera manufacturer wanted you to see. Now I will be white balancing to the white, gray, and black on the chart, and you'll see that in most of the scenes. First, I'm going to concentrate on the reds. I was just kind of going around the house finding something that had red in it, and again, as you can see here, the Sony has a lot more saturation than the Blackmagic. Alright, next up I went into the garage and shot a taillight on my car. Typically Sony, I think all Sony cameras have had this problem. When you shoot taillights, they kind of turn yellow, and when they oversaturate. So on the vector scope, the yellow vector kind of skews around towards yellow. As you can see, the Pocket camera is doing that a little bit too, but not as bad. And basically what I've done here is I've raised the saturation level on the Pocket camera to match the Sony where it normally is. So in Resolve, if I have it set at 50, which is the default for Sony, I've raised it to 63 on the Blackmagic to match them equally. All right, next up we're going to look at a boring chart. On the right hand side, you're going to see those colors on the bottom are a bit more vibrant than you see in the Pocket. But I don't want to talk about colors in terms of saturation just yet. I want to look at the actual colors themselves, where they fit on the vector scope. And as you can see, I basically brought up the color from black and white on the Blackmagic to match that of the color intensity of the Sony. And what you'll notice, those dots that you see, they don't line up with each other, meaning these cameras have different colors. They're the way they're angled on the vector scope. Each color has a different vector basically. And you're going to notice, if you can see it well enough, the Sony camera actually lines up quite well with the vector boxes, meaning they're very accurate. They're very technically accurate, whereas the Blackmagic Pocket camera doesn't. And is that a bad thing? Not really. I really don't really care. The one thing I care about most is skin, and if the Blackmagic gets it right on the skin tones and everything else is maybe not super accurate, maybe it's not designed to be accurate. Maybe it's designed to be more filmic, to give you more of a filmic look, or maybe they're trying to make it look like an Arri Alexa or something like that. I don't know, but I don't really care as long as the vector between red and yellow, where the skin is, between those two vectors are accurate in terms of skin. All right, we have an outdoor scene. What I did here is I matched the two cameras, and I matched the Pocket camera to the A7R3. Why, you'll see here in a minute. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play this for a few seconds, and right about now, I just took out the saturation. And wait a few seconds, and I'm going to take out the tone curve right there. So now you're seeing the difference, the true difference between the two cameras in the scene. And what I did here is I set the zebras on both cameras to 100, and the snow that you see in the mountain peaks, I got those just to be below clipping on both cameras, and this is the resulting image that you have. I didn't really like the Pocket camera the way it looked, so I liked the Sony a bit better, so I just matched the two. And I'm just showing you that I can match the two cameras together. That weren't that hard. I basically just had to increase the saturation on the Pocket camera and then create a tone curve to make it basically brighter in the midtones. Next up, I was looking at the color green, and as you can see, these two cameras are matched in terms of saturation, but the color green on that sign is a bit different between the two cameras. And right about now, I just took the saturation down to its default level on the Pocket camera, and right now I changed the tone curve. The reason I showed you those two examples where I matched the two cameras and then I slowly brought them back to where they were shot in camera is just to tell you that I was a little bit disappointed with the Blackmagic camera because, and I'm just a little bit, I don't mind adding saturation in post. That's really easy. That doesn't take but a few seconds. It's just a slider adjustment until you dial it into taste and you're like, oh, that looks good. But the thing that kind of bothered me was having to make it look more Rec 709 like the Sony camera was adding a curves adjustment to match the two. and I had to do that on everything. And again, the way I was exposing those is I was taking the brightest part of the image that I wanted to retain highlights and put that at 100 IRE and match those on both camera. And this camera always came in darker in the midtones, so I always had to bring up the midtones with a curve adjustment. Again, I am not shooting in film on this camera, and I'm not shooting in S-Log. That would require a lot more work. So if you're looking for a quick turnaround, this camera, you're gonna have to add saturation, and you're also gonna have to do something with the curve adjustment to make it more Rec 709. Now, I've shot this digital clock before, and I know that the Sony has a particular problem, and I wanted to see how it relates to the Blackmagic. So if I just isolate the clock itself, what you see here is you've got a bright blue or cyan color for the actual time, and in the background is kind of this darker blue. And what happens with these Sony cameras, and I'll demonstrate, is you can see here I've got the scopes. And if I take the Sony camera, which is on the right, and I make a curves adjustment for the saturation, I bring down the saturation in the shadows, you can see that I can match those pretty well. So the brightest part of the image, the digital clock, they match quite well, but it was just that dark blue in the background. I always have to bring down the saturation on the Sony cameras to match other cameras that I've done before, and this is no exception. I kind of like the way the Blackmagic is handling the shadows in terms of saturation better than the Sony. All right, next up I shot a sunrise. Here I'm just shooting the parking lot, and you'll see me pan up here to the more color in the sky, but what I'm interested in is the asphalt. As you can see, like I was talking about before, the Sony camera has more color intensity in those shadows. And I was talking about before, that's always been, to me, more of an issue. Whereas the Blackmagic Pocket camera, that asphalt looks more natural than the Sony does. All right, I just shifted the camera around to the sunrise. What I've done here, like I've done before, is I've matched the sky, the brightest part of the sky, to 100 IRE, so they both matched up. And I matched up the color intensity, so the saturation, and also the tone curve, so they're both matched. So you can see quite easily, I'm trying to make it easy on you guys, so you can see the differences between the two in terms of the colors on a typical sunrise. Which one's more accurate? Which one's more pleasing? Boy, I guess I'll leave that up to you guys to decide which one you like better. Again, just a few seconds later, I just rotated it out and kind of made the shot a bit wider. The exact same thing, so you can get kind of a different view of the sky and maybe some more of the different colors. All right, moving on to the most important thing, which I think is skin. What I've done here is I've matched the white balance, and because I had a chart in the shot, and also I matched the tone curve, so they should be somewhat similar in terms of their tonal range, so you can see the colors more easily, the differences between the two. Here's another shot where I was mostly backlit, and I wanted to raise the exposure to see, sometimes you'll see something happen with skin, and sure enough, like you could see on her arm, the difference in the skin is quite different. One interesting thing to note here is, I was shooting this 4K on the Blackmagic Pocket camera at I think 24 frames per second. You can see there's quite a bit of aliasing in her hat on the left hand side where the Sony doesn't have any. And here's some more skin to see the difference. Again, all I've done here is I've matched the white balance, the white, the gray, and the black, so they're exactly the same, and I've matched the tone curve. And as you can see, the differences between the skin. Maybe you like one more than the other. So originally when I heard about this camera back last year at NEB, I was like, ooh, this could really replace my A6500. They're both about the same price. I was thinking this would be a great studio camera. Because I knew even at the time when I was looking at NEB last year, it didn't have an EVF. And sure enough, I've shot a bunch of stuff with this outside, and it's difficult because it doesn't have an EVF. And I want to be able to hold it up to my eye. And as somebody of my age, maybe some of you young guys, like my teenagers, they could hold this camera probably about this close away from their eye and be able to see that clearly. Me, I'm kind of like double the distance. I'm more like this. And when you get, even with a 5-inch screen, it's really hard to tell with sun beating down on the screen what's in focus and what's not. So, but with an EVF, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can adjust a dioptric adjustment and boom, you're done. You can see things clear, especially with a suction cup on your eye. You can see things just fantastic. So for me, I'm not going to be buying this camera. And it's kind of ironic because this camera, especially with the raw capabilities, I was playing around with it, like overexposing stuff, way overexposing. But then in post, in Resolve, being able to just like recover it, all those highlights so easily. It's quite amazing what this camera can do, especially in the raw capabilities. But for me, the lack of EVF, I can't use it outside. And the 4K 60, it's begging to be used outside for sports and stuff like that. So I think it would be more of maybe a studio camera for me, especially just looking at, getting the colors right. And that's basically what I want to do here, is just concentrate on the colors, because this camera's been out for a while and a lot of people have already reviewed it and they've talked about the plus and minus. And I don't really need to get into that, like the battery and the lack of IBIS and all that other stuff, but all the great things like the codec and shooting raw. I just basically wanted to show you guys the differences of color, especially between like the red and yellow vector on the vector scope, between those colors, especially in the skin tones, seeing the differences. That's pretty much it. Hope it helps you guys. It definitely helped me to get this in and take a look at it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.